All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Phil Anderson. I'm with the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership, and I'm glad to have you here. Joining me are Pat Filatico. Pat is running the slideshow. She is our CEO with the Greenleaf Center, and unfortunately, she has come down with laryngitis, so she is under the weather. But she is here. She is working with us. Just not going to be a voice for us today. Joining us is Scott Mondor. Scott is with SMD, and he'll be co-presenting this afternoon's webinar. And we are so grateful that you're here. We ask that you connect with your webcam if you can. If you have questions, you can post them in the chat window on the right of your screen. That way, between Scott, myself, and Pat, whoever is not in the mode of talking at that moment and presenting can kind of look at those questions and make sure that your questions get answered as we go through this process. And there's some points I'd like to offer as we look at this introduction to servant leadership, and then we'll get into further on the tools of the best test. But in 1970, a steady beacon brightened the leadership landscape with the publication of an essay titled "The Servant as Leader" by Robert K. Greenleaf. In this book and in his subsequent writings, Greenleaf developed the principles of servant leadership, a congruent leadership philosophy based on a simple but profound idea. Leaders whom we trust and want to follow achieve moral authority by being servants to followers and the organizations, not by wielding titles or using coercive power. Moreover, entire institutions can act as servants. Every organization has a chart that shows who we are to each other, but servant leadership turns the chart upside down by focusing on how we are for each other. Servant leadership, however, is not a shallow feel-good philosophy. It calls for radical personal and corporate accountability, deep inner work, and an effort to develop capacities like systems working, systems thinking, persuasion, intuition, foresight, and listening with presence. Some servant leadership-based outcomes like profits and retention are not that difficult to measure. Incidentally, research shows that servant-led organizations improve in both areas. But others, like the growth of people and an organization's impact on more caring and just society, are more difficult to get a handle on. Luckily, Robert Greenleaf gave us a test for servant leaders and servant-led organizations, and he called it the best test. Do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? And what is the effect on the least privileged in society? Will they benefit or at least not be further deprived? Greenleaf's best test is a roadmap of a real inner and outer journey, not a one-time evaluation of knowledge or inventory of future intentions. Servant leader icons, including the late Ann McGee Cooper, Isabel Lopez, Don Frick, and others, spent a year pooling their best thoughts about how to gauge growth against the best test. The Greenleaf Center then partnered with Strategic Management Decisions, Scott's group. SMD is an employee survey and assessment company that delivers results, not just insights, via its patented cloud-based technology, SMD Link. Together, we have developed and are provisioning Greenleaf's best test. Greenleaf's best test will be offered exclusively through a network of Greenleaf's best test certified consultants. And with that, let's go ahead and get started into an introduction of servant leadership. Again, we welcome questions as we go throughout. We encourage you to put them in the chat box on the right side of the screen so that we can follow along with that. And I'm going to ask Scott to give a brief welcome on behalf of him and his organization.
Thank you, Phil. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Scott Mondor from SMD. It really is a privilege to have partnered with the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership. You're going to get a lot of great information today. I think you're going to enjoy it, and then of course, we'll share the information with you Phil's going to take you through the first part. I'll take you through the second. But as an assessment company, looking at leadership in different ways, being able to measure it in different ways, but really keeping it focused on the human part and the and the behavioral change part is really what this servant leadership journey is all about. And we are just excited to be a part of that with the Greenleaf Center. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Scott. So I think Pat's going to run our slides. So we want this introduction to servant leadership. We've talked about what Greenleaf talks about. And so when you think about leadership, we can often get leadership and management confused, kind of think about them in the same vernacular, but there are differences. But think about the time. Do you remember your first management job? And you look at that, you look back at that, and the opportunity you had to work with people, being part of a team, leading them, and they look to you for some guidance. And so you look at that and see what you could accomplish in that first go round, that first time you were put in charge, and we have different ideas of what being in charge really means. So you move from that, and soon your brilliance earned you the next step up on the corporate ladder, and now you have more people who report to you. And you have a greater area and roles and responsibilities. And you have a greater responsibility to the organization, because now you oversee resources and a variety of things. And I don't mean the people, because the people are far more than resources. They're not capital goods. They're people with all the strengths and weaknesses and all the advantages that come with them. So you get a chance to step up that corporate ladder because of your success in working with people. You continue to progress in your talents and work ethic for the exact traits needed to turn around the entire Chicago operation. And because of your accomplishments, you were rewarded with an entire division to run, more resources, more people you're responsible for. And we'll get into the nuances of, are you responsible for them, or are you responsible to them? And that takes us down a different path and takes us in the direction of servant leadership. But what happens after you get this opportunity to run this entire division now? And with all that hard work, you are finally the king. Or at least you've been named the CEO. And what does that bring with it? And that's what we're here to talk about. Throughout this journey, you probably repeated the refrain many times, it's all about the people. And you said it constantly, it's all about the people. But did you live it as often as it was easy to say it? So were you able to walk the talk? Well, servant leadership principles are being implemented in the public, private, academic, and nonprofit sectors. Sometimes people view it as, well, it's soft. It's incredibly hard, because there's nothing harder in business than working with people. And we mean business in the broadest sense. They bring challenges, they bring their personal lives, they bring their values. Machines don't bring values. They bring, this is how the process is, this is what the algorithm says it will do, we'll do it. People don't work by algorithms. And so we have this, and so, but does it work? And we have organizations like TD Industries and many, many others who have long been practicing. TD probably as long as any, because of an early relationship with Robert Greenleaf. But they understand that these principles will work, but they take practice and constant attention to the processes of how do you deal with people and support them.
You have a question from Scott.
So we have a question.
Scott Knudsen.
No question. Sorry, Phil.
There's a different Scott.
There's a different Scott. Scott has a question. Okay.
Go ahead, Scott.
Make sure your microphone is on, Scott. Scott, can you type your question in the chat box in the right?
He has no question. He's fine.
Oh, he's fine? Okay, okay. Okay, great. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide then. So Greenleaf characterized servant leadership and defined it for us. It was something that's been ageless, and we'll touch on that in a minute, but it's a natural feeling that one wants to serve, and not just to serve, but to serve first. It's where you begin. And it's natural. It's about caring and loving others. It's a desire to help. It's fundamental human value. And those sound soft, they sound maybe easy, but there's nothing harder than loving someone, because that means you have to love with forgiveness and caring and realize failure and all those other pieces that go along with that. And ultimately we get to strength and success and longevity and sustainability. So it's a natural feeling that one wants to serve first. And it's not new. It's timeless. Whether it was Aristotle, nearly every belief system has language that talks about the importance of serving others. So from Aristotle saying, what is the essence of life? To serve others and do good, to Albert Schweitzer, to Martin Luther King Jr., to as recently as Mother Teresa saying, there's no joy in transcending self. There is joy in transcending self, to serve others. It's all there. We know this. It's inherent in who we are as communal people. The challenge is, do we get caught by thinking it's something different than what it truly can be, which is a natural feeling and a desire to serve others first. So once you have this desire to serve first, Greenleaf says, then and only then does a conscious choice bring one to aspire to lead. You don't start out there, because there are many examples of people who say, oh, I want to lead you. I want to be your leader. Now follow me, instead of earning their way there. And so we at the Greenleaf Center have this circular chart here. You see at the beginning, in the middle, where it all begins. You start with this desire to serve, and then from there you get into how do I serve? Well, or who do I serve? I serve self. I serve others. I serve an organization. How do I do that? With self-awareness, empathy, foresight, execution, alignment, vision, persuading, building, listening. Who are those key audiences I work with? Serving, you serve associates, serve in communities. We serve partners. We serve customers. And then how do we know if we're getting there? And that's what the best test is all about. The best test is the fruit of our efforts. And we have to be able, and to know if you're making some strides, you have to be able to measure some of that. How is our fruit turning out? What's the quality of our fruit? How much is it yielding? And that's what the best test is all about. So the Greenleaf's best test enables us to illuminate the organizational bright spots. It enables us to shine a beacon on the neglected corners and the issues that exist in each and every organization. It offers an open and healthy dialogue. It provides a framework for organizational life. Not organizational process, but organizational life. And it provides a commitment to accountability and recognizes and focuses on the interdependence of people throughout organizations and the people those organizations connect to. In this best test, do those served grow as persons? And how do they grow? Do they become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to be servants? Those are pretty tall tasks, but it's what Greenleaf expects of us. And so as we put together the best test assessment tool, we had to look, what are those overarching themes that we're trying to achieve? And these were the outward indicators from a comprehensive standpoint. Do employees feel joyful and fulfilled by their work? is it trustworthy? Does it generate trustworthy employees and colleagues, and that we trust others through that? That the best test helps us find meaning in one's work and community. That's what's at the heart of servant leadership. Those are the overarching themes we are trying to get to for every single organization. And if you achieve those, you've made major strides in getting your organization to not only be sustainable, but being a place that people will be drawn to. Then we went beyond the overarching themes of the best test. We broke it down into each of these categories that Greenleaf talks about. So we started out with healthier. Well, what does healthier mean? Well, it pursues health across 4 dimensions, that being mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. How is your health? How are your people? How are we together? And so we want to be healthy. Healthier also means, how do we encounter opportunities, both successes and failures, and come away with a positive attitude? Not, I can't believe you failed, but what do we learn from that? How do we take that forward? And then ultimately, how do we manage work-related stress? Because we know we all have it. We know there are times it's more than others, but how do we manage that stress? And it determines our level of health. The second group is wiser. When you think about how do we make people wiser, it's not smarter, it's not more knowledgeable, it's wiser, it's an appreciation for all those things tied together. So when we think about wiser, it seeks self-awareness, learning, and sharing experiences. So we use what we have experienced to become more aware of who we are. If you want to be wiser, you'll start to listen more than you'll talk. Then you'll see and act on the bigger picture using foresight. And Greenleaf talks a great deal about foresight and reflection as being a part of that. You have to act on that. The next piece is freer, more autonomous. What are the indicators there? Well, it means the ability to assert perspectives individually and organizationally. There's something on my mind. Am I willing to share it? Do I feel comfortable in sharing it? Is it run against the flow of the organization? Am I still willing to put it out there? Or is it that we're down to the old thing of don't shoot the messenger? We can't do that. So we need the autonomy there. Each individual wants to build competence, and we do that through feedback and coaching. And then you demonstrate commitment to excellence in what we do. All those are part of enabling people to be freer, more autonomous in their work and in how they work with others. You get to more likely to serve. So you start working these people around, and do they become more likely themselves to serve? How do we measure that? Well, are we able to influence them through modeling and mentoring? We said, well, be a role model. Well, that sounds good. And mentoring, and what does that look like? But how do we influence them? And we all tend to look back on those people and say, oh, that's the reason I do what I do today. And there's both positive mentoring, and there's lessons we learn from people that we say, I don't want to be like them. In the more likely to serve, are you able to express empathy and caring? Empathy from where they are. Not, I want them to, I know what they feel like, but where are they? And then we practice it within and for the community of people that we are. And that gets them to where they will serve because they have been served. And Greenleaf didn't stop at all the positive things that, these will make us all better people. But he challenged us to think about how about those less privileged? Those that they not be, they're less privileged, and we shouldn't take advantage of that. So we have to constantly make ethical decisions. What is fair? What is just? And not just for the things that we see, but for the things that we do. What are those not only consequences, but unintended consequences? We have to respect others regardless of their background, their beliefs, or other characteristics. And then we ultimately contribute to a more just and loving society. And everybody gets worried about just and loving. But ultimately, if you think about a place that you belong, that you feel a part of, you feel part of the community and work in a volunteer role, in your family, in your geographic community, or whatever group you belong to, that's what we want. We want to feel that we're part of something just and loving and caring for each other. So that's what gets us to least privilege. When we're there, we're at a different place than we find ourselves on a day-to-day basis here.
Everything I do and everything I do professionally, my life has been shaped by 7 years of work as a young man in Africa. From 1971 to 1977, I look young, but I'm not. I worked in Zambia, Kenya, Ivory Coast, Algeria, Somalia, in projects of technical cooperation with African countries. I worked for an Italian NGO. And every single project that we set up in Africa failed. And I was distraught. I thought, age 21, that we Italians were good people and we were doing good work in Africa. Instead, everything we touched, we killed. Our first project, the one that has inspired my first book, Ripples from the Zambezi, was a project where we Italians decided to teach Zambian people how to grow food. So we arrived there with Italian seeds in southern Zambia, in this absolutely magnificent valley, going down to the Zambezi River, and we taught the local people how to grow Italian tomatoes and zucchini. And of course, the local people had absolutely no interest in doing that, so we paid them to come and work, and sometimes they would show up. And we were amazed that the local people in such fertile valley would not have any agriculture. And, but instead of asking them how come they were not growing anything, we simply said, thank God we're here. Just in the nick of time to save the Zambian people from starvation. And of course, everything in Africa grew beautifully, and we had these magnificent tomatoes. In Italy, a tomato will grow to this size, in Zambia to this size. And we could not believe. And we were telling the Zambians, look how easy agriculture is. When the tomatoes were nice and ripe and red, overnight, some 200 hippos came out from the river and they ate everything. And we said to the Zambians, my God, the hippos. And the Zambia said, yes, that's why we have no agriculture here. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked.
So that video, what it goes to the heart of is when we think about less privileged, we have to ask. We have to listen to them and talk with them and understand who they are and what they bring. And don't assume we know, don't assume we know better. Don't assume because we're in certain positions we have the answers. The people closest to it know most and may know best. And we have to value that and value that they may think differently than we, but that's okay. And so you get at the heart of this best test. And so how do we listen? And then how do we know what the fruits of our actions are? And that takes us in the direction of the best test. And how do we start measuring? And I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to Scott. And Scott's going to talk you through the best test instrument that we've developed.
Thank you, Phil. That was fantastic. Again, you know, when you get into everything, you take what Phil just taught us about servant leadership. You know, it still comes down to creating an instrument that really captures, you know, the essence of what Dr. Greenleaf was talking about, and not just coming up with something in a vacuum. I mean, obviously there are many different behaviors that go into servant leadership, and of course you can't measure every possible nook and cranny of everything, but what you want to do is really get a good deep understanding of what that is and be able to measure it so that a leader can get some practical information out of it, but that also captures those behaviors that are so important as a servant leader. And so, you know, you see 6 steps here. Some of this is, you know, pure statistical validation, which is obviously very important because you want to measure things properly and appropriately and make sure that they work. So there is some science here, but at the same time, there's a lot of experience, nuance, and art into it as well, and that's important. And so, you know, how you get there and how you build a true instrument, again, is to get a lot of different viewpoints, and that can come from different places. First would be, going right to Dr. Greenleaf himself and just going through all of his writings, all of his materials, and as Phil showed us in the beginning, what are those different pieces and elements of servant leadership that really capture the essence of that. The second thing was to really get an understanding from the folks who have lived this and who work, with the Greenleaf Center and who are certified consultants, et cetera, people who live this every day, and they coach and work with leaders around the globe every day. Really to interview them as subject matter experts, because again, it's what Dr. Greenleaf wrote, but also how does this look like? What exactly does this look like in the real world on a day-to-day basis that would give a leader very practical information. And so what we did was we interviewed a very large swath of subject matter experts. In other words, you don't want to go inside the vacuum and just come up with things and decree them. You want to get a lot of viewpoints. So we interviewed a lot of subject matter experts. We were able to then content analyze those notes. In other words, we were pulling out behavioral statements, assessment statements, et cetera. And then what we did was, again, get those reviewed, pull out, the ones that are most important, and really keep the essence of that so that the instrument is practical and not too long, et cetera. And then we began the process of really pilot testing this with multiple organizations. So as I said, there's this statistical rigor, but also you've really got to get to the essence of servant leadership. And you're able to capture that when you follow these steps in the process. So if we go to the next slide, as you've probably seen before, there are ways to collect data. And again, as you might imagine, there are, whether you're doing this, the best test in the form of a survey of employees or more of a 360 assessment for a leader from different angles, what you're really doing are getting folks to talk about behaviors and have them rate themselves, their leader, et cetera, on these different behaviors. Are they happening? To what extent? And so you get into the classic 5-point scale, which is always a great valid way to do these types of things. But as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you have all of these different elements of what it means to be, a servant leader that are part of the best test. And then the ability for those folks doing the ratings to rate, that individual on whether what level of agreement that they have with those particular behaviors. So the key here is to be very behavioral, very actionable, to give that leader the capability to see exactly how they are in these different areas. And of course, we'll talk about how the reporting looks, but you really want to give people a clear view of where they stand and where their opportunities for improvement are, and of course where their great strengths are as well. So if we go to the next slide, the other thing you want to get to is letting people share their thoughts. The previous slide talked about rating people, and you don't just want to make this a thermometer test and make it as medicinal as you can. That doesn't really get to the essence either. It really is also about what is it about working for the organization or for that leader, and letting people really talk about and put into words, their own words, exactly how they feel about those situations. And so it's simple things that they can respond to that will help the leader understand, where can we work, where can we improve, what are we doing well. That always gives that leader an opportunity to really get some key themes. And so as you ask this, open-ended, for example, what do you like best about working for this organization? Really getting a feel for what do these items look like? How do you really put them into themes so people can know what is it that really is the draw for this organization when it comes to servant leadership? People, work environment, teamwork. It's going to be different for every organization, but really being able to content analyze these themes and really show leaders not only the numbers that they're getting quote unquote rated on, but also the themes and what are people saying and what do they reflect in the organization is so important to give that leader the opportunity to really understand and really be able to move forward in the right direction. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things that we always want to think about is not just measuring things, right? That's certainly important. It certainly gives you the lay of the land, but really also understanding, what elements of servant leadership really drive performance for that leader? Again, whatever that performance may be, whether it's dollars and cents on the for-profit side, or lives saved, or mouths feed on the nonprofit side, or if you're in healthcare, it's about patient satisfaction, et cetera, serving the greater good, population health. Those are things where you can combine really important outcomes that are important to folks, and some statistical analysis that doesn't have to be, like I said, too rigid, but really about understanding not only how do we perform on the best test, but what elements of servant leadership really drive true outcomes. And again, whether they are for-profit, not-for-profit, et cetera, to really understand and prioritize, because as you know, a leader has a lot on their plates. They can't work on everything at the same time, or 10 different things, and try to do their day job. So you want to narrow things down. One of the things that we do on the technology and the platform is to show that in a very simple way for leaders, basically charting how you performed on the elements of the best test. So the higher up the chart you go, the better you performed on these different elements of the best test. And then moving left to right, using analysis, what elements of the best test were most important in your organization for this leader to drive actual results? And the things that land in that bottom right-hand box might be that first key focus area, which is elements where maybe you scored a little bit in the development area, a little bit low, but also very important to driving outcomes, whatever they may be. So if you think about a low-performing, very important area, would be the first place that you'd want to start to look at as a leader as an opportunity for improvement. And as you go around the chart, you can see you have areas to promote. Maybe you're doing fantastic on an element of servant leadership that's also very important to driving results. You want to promote that, talk that up, et cetera. Upper left is maintain. That means you're doing great. It may not be a big differentiator for it, but you're doing great, so whatever it is, maintain it, keep doing it. Bottom left is monitor, keep an eye on it. You're low performing, it's not hurting you too much in the outcome side, but since you're low performing, keep a close eye or monitor it. And if we go to the next slide, this is some elements of the best test, as you can see here. We have the leader, the wiser leader, the freer leader, the likely to serve, the healthier, the leader focuses on the least privileged. Everything on the far right, those are going to be the elements that were very important for this leader in this organization to focus on. The things on the far right, the things in the bottom right-hand box are going to be those areas that they came in a little bit low, also very important. So if they were to start anywhere and do anything, they wouldn't want to try to work on everything here. They'd really want to start on just those key elements that come into play in the bottom right-hand box. So this is about prioritization and being respectful of the leader's time in terms of what they need to work on. And again, as you look around, you have promote. There's elements of the best test where the individual can promote, maintain, monitor, but the focus area would be where they want to start first. If we go to the next slide, what you'll have is, and if you've done assessments like this in the past, whether they be employee surveys or 360s, you really want to have leaders of leaders to be able to help, the managers and supervisors who work underneath them. And what that means is having directors and VPs see the leaders and how they performed or in their span of control, so they can help to coach, that they can get an idea of who needs the most help or the least help, or who's going to be the beacon, as Dr. Greenleaf would say it, in terms of who's doing well already on elements of servant leadership and prioritizing who they're going to work with, and getting an opportunity to look at benchmark information and also that 4-box heat map, and that way everybody's seeing that. And of course the comments, the open-ended comments give you great color commentary on how you're performing. And then of course, as we know, leaders do like to see data, and so we want to provide that as well and give leaders roll-up scores, et cetera. So there is some data involved, but again, it's all about getting that data in the right hands and making it as actionable as we can for leaders. If we go to the next slide. Helping leaders to focus on the right areas. So whatever element of the best test that we have, you want leaders to be able to easily use technology as they're used to already, to focus on those key areas that are most important. The focus areas, they can use the radio buttons on the right, click the elements and the items from the best test that they'd like to build their action plan around so that they can work on their developmental areas. And so they're going to use radio buttons on the right, as you can see next to the big blue arrow. If we go to the next slide, what you'll note is that for every item that they want to work on from the best test, and we don't want them to pick 20 items, we want them to pick 2 or 3, once they pick the items that they want to work on, the Greenleaf Center provides best practices, ideas, initiatives aligned to those items that they've selected so that they don't have to create an action plan from scratch. They can work on really strong, certified things that have worked in the past for servant leaders that they can pick and choose from, so that a leader is not left to their own, just to their own devices. They can certainly tweak these as much as they like, but really to be able to pick and choose things that they want to work on that the folks, the Greenleaf coaches, et cetera, have really, looked at over the years and that are presented to the leader to really give them a running start in their development. And that's a big opportunity. And so you'll have multiple options to take a look at, but they don't have to pick them all. We just wanted to pick a few and really create a plan that'll work well for them. So if we go to the next slide. Once they've selected a few items to work on, the system will pull those elements into the action planning finalization tool. So for every element of the best test that they've decided to work on, they've got an opportunity to see those best practices, click a start and a finish dates of when they want to start working on these things, when they want to finish them, a status update of where they are in their progress so that they can see for themselves and track their own progress, or they can have their boss can pop in and see how they're doing as well. Write themselves some notes, whether it's what they're going to do next, et cetera, however they want to do that. The other part is, on this content, a few things to remember. Number one is you're not beholden to the best practices that get served up. The Greenleaf consultant that's working with you, or even your own organization, if you already have great material, good actionable material in the realm of servant leadership, you can add that in. The second thing is, you'll notice in the middle of this screen in green letters, it says add a custom item. If a leader does see that they have other opportunities or things that have worked for them in the past, or maybe another manager is having great success and they have some great ideas, or they go and share this information with their own direct reports and employees, and they'd like to add in some of their ideas, we definitely encourage that. They can click the green button that says add a custom item. It'll give them a blank line that they can put in their own ideas as well. So they're not beholden to just what was on the screen on the previous slide. So there's a lot of flexibility here for leaders to really take action in the right place. And of course, do the right thing when it comes to the best test, which is of course improving the areas of servant leadership. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about building on the bright spots.
So one of the key
back to you.
Well, one of the key things we want to try to do with this is we want to use appreciative inquiry with this, because within every organization, every single organization has things that work for them. Otherwise, they'd all be out of business. So there's things they're doing well. How do we capitalize on what those things that are working? And from an appreciative inquiry standpoint, you say, what's working? How do we do more of that? I think it goes right back to what Scott was just talking about, the customization of the development platforms. We need to be able to look at that. We've got a video here we'd like to share with you about appreciative inquiry, but we think it's really critical that we don't try to come in and change everything. You look at what works. How do you do more of that? How do you do less of what doesn't work well, and build on that? So Pat's going to run the video for us on building on the bright spots about appreciative inquiry. But for whatever reason, we don't have sound.
So that family members would have a convenient place to stay while loved ones. Hi, I'm Jackie Kelm. I'm a business consultant and I'm an author of several books on the principles of appreciative inquiry. And in this video, I'm going to give you a whirlwind overview of appreciative inquiry. So let's get started. Back in the 1980s, there was a low-budget hotel named the Omni Hotel that was right across the street from the Cleveland Clinic. The clinic decided to buy the hotel and fix it up so that family members would have a convenient place to stay while loved ones were getting treated. They put a lot of money in to fix it up, but kept the original management team, who continued to run it like a low-budget motel. The staff fought terribly with each other, and service was awful. The clinic hired PhD student David Cooperwriter to help them out, along with his advisor Suresh Srivastava from Case Western Reserve University. Now, traditionally in a situation like this, consultants would apply a problem-solving approach to fix the management problem. Common solutions might be to replace some of the management team or send them to training in the hope they would get along better. David Cooperwriter did neither. Instead, he piloted the first appreciative inquiry intervention. Here's what he did. He brought the management team up to Chicago to spend a week in a highly rated 5-star hotel. He gave them explicit instructions that they were to ask about, notice, and study best practices and what the 5-star hotel staff did well for an entire week. They were not to notice or comment on anything they did not do well. So they went up to employees and asked about what worked, and they looked for strengths everywhere. And at no time were they to talk about or think anything about their own hotel. At the end, they agreed to give a report back to the 5-star hotel of what they found. And when the week was up, they delivered the report with all the strengths and successes and good things they found. And the 5-star hotel was so grateful, they put on a grand banquet at the end for the Omni Hotel staff to thank them. The managers went back home so inspired and full of ideas, they completely turned things around, and the Omni Hotel became a 4-star hotel within a relatively short period of time with the same people running it. This is the first of many stories of how appreciative inquiry has been used to transform organizations. Another way to explain appreciative inquiry is in relation to problem solving. In this chart, we have a continuum with poor results on the far left and exceptional results on the far right. When a problem occurs, such as the management issues we just talked about, you are getting results that are below what you want or on the left side of the continuum. What we traditionally do then is begin problem solving to fix the issue and return to status quo. In our Omni Hotel example, it would be training or replacing the staff to build an effective management team. You can think of problem solving as restoration or returning to acceptable results. But what appreciative inquiry does is take you into a whole new realm of opportunities. So instead of just fixing the problem, you transform the situation to create an outcome that goes way beyond just fixing the problem. In the Omni Hotel case, they didn't just develop a good management team, which can be difficult and time-consuming. They transformed the entire operation into a 4-star hotel in a relatively short period of time. This is what happens when you apply the appreciative approach, and why we refer to it as a generative approach.
So one of the other keys in the appreciative inquiry is understanding the 5D cycle that is part of that whole body of work. First, you define, so what is affirmative, what's your topic choice? In our case, we're using the best test as to defining these are behaviors we seek. And then we have to start asking the questions inside of organizations. So then we are in that second phase, which is discovery. What gives life? What is the best of what is that we're doing? So we start to appreciate the things that we do and the things we do well. From that, you move on to step 3, which is dream, which is what might be. What is the world calling for us? And what would we envision results when we're not trying to get back to status quo, as we just saw in the video, but if we envision results that are generative, that move us to a whole new place. Once you get beyond that dream, then the question becomes, how do we design? What should be our ideal? How do we co-construct that? And co-constructing is critical because it's not someone saying, this is what you should do, but it becomes, this is what we can do. And I think the example of the hotel they showed goes to the heart of that, which is what can we be, what is our ideal, and how do we do it together? The last piece of this 5D cycle is deliver. So how do we give How do we help the team? How do we adjust and improvise? How do we not just empower them, but let them use the power they have to create not only something new, but to sustain these actions, to sustain the design, the results, the appreciative nature of this, what we do and what we do well, and sustain that, and even add more to it as we get good at other things, which brings us back around to what do we appreciate. And so you start to see, once we use the best test to step inside, then we become in this four-circle cycle of learning, appreciating, results, co-constructing, sustaining, rinse and repeat. And so it gets us to that important place by using appreciative inquiry, along with what we're learning out of best test and what we're aspiring to by using the best test. So the Greenleaf Center is offering this as an opportunity for people to become best test certified consultants. There's an application involved, and you'll learn about servant leadership. We think it gives the client more value to know that you get all of what's here. There's a certification class that goes along with it that comes in a couple different steps. And then there's biannual recertification, because we are continually looking at what we can do from the best test. Greenleaf's seminal book was The Servant as Leader, but has recently been updated and edited by a scholar. So we have the contemporary Servant as Leader. There's things coming all the time. There's things we're learning from research about servant leadership. And so we want to be able to continue to update and upgrade, and that's the biannual recertification opportunities. So we will develop that as a certified consultant. Then you'll be able to take what you know, what we know, put it together, and create tremendous value for the clients that you may already have, or it may give you an opportunity to get new clients that are looking for something different and something more, which we think the best test provides. So the other thing that I'll let Scott talk about is the SHRM, continuing ed.
Sure, thanks, Phil. So, you get a certification credit for this webinar, and we're happy to provide that. So you have your SHRM certification number, so if you can jot that down, as well as the HRCI credit as well. And so we are a certified provider of both credits, so you'll get a credit for each SHRM and HRCI. So please capture those numbers as we're sitting here, and then if you turn those in, you can definitely get a credit for each for attending the webinar. Thanks, Bill.
So at this point, we're open to questions. What's on your mind? What are you seeing? What can we do to help you? So if we got anybody who wants to ask questions, if we got somebody who wants to type something in the chat box, somebody wants to raise their hand as it is. I think the other thing would be, if your organization is, if it's an organization, you as an individual are interested in going down that next path, then get in touch with us at the Greenleaf Center, and we can begin talking with you between SMD, the partnership we have. Then we get into questions about what the cost of going through the certification is, the cost of using the tool, all of those pieces that go along with it. Those are conversations which, this is not the best setting for that. Those are conversations that need to happen, but not here. And so we would strongly encourage you to contact us and reach out, because we want to be there for you. And we think we've got a great team put together between the Greenleaf Center and SMD, and we've got great tools. We see a lot of people kind of frustrated in the marketplace today going, boy, I wish there was something different. I wish there was something more. Well, this is more, and this is different. And some people would say it runs countercultural. Others would say this is the culture we all seek. And so we would subscribe to the latter, that this is a culture that we seek. And so we are grateful that you joined us. We don't see any questions at this time, but we know when we get off, it'll be like any other event. You see a speaker ask, is there any questions? As soon as they get off, then people line up to talk to them. We hope that is the case, so we hope you'll reach out to the Greenleaf Center, and between that we can facilitate conversations with the three parties of the Greenleaf Center, yourself, and SMD. We're grateful for Scott taking the time to join us today and be a part of this presentation and share this tool, this valuable tool with us. So when you think about the work that we do, what we strive to be, the best test gets us a long way there. And that is, do the people we serve, do they grow? Do they become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to serve and take care of those that are less privileged, who are more disadvantaged and maybe don't have the voice, and how do we give them the voice that they deserve and that we offer them out of mutual respect as people who are thinking about them from a human standpoint. So we offer that. We don't have any questions. And so with that, we are going to wrap this up. Thank you, Scott, for being a part of it.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Phil.
Thank you, Pat, for managing all the technology from Atlanta, and we hope you get well. And we look forward to any questions and any opportunities to work with you as we go forward. Thank you, and have a great, great day.
Thank you.